Michael Buehler is from the World Economic Forum. It is, as you all know, an independent and international body. It seeks to engage with business, politics and ideas in ways that shape and improve and inform the world. Michael Buehler is the World Economic Forum Associate Director and Head of Real Estate. Thanks very much, Michael. Enjoy it.
Thank you. Thank you, Deborah. Thank you very much. Thank you, David, for the kind invitation. Thank you to this great setup here. I'm quite impressed by the organization, by the polling, and I hope I will follow the advice of this poll. I would like to go briefly over the agenda. So I would like to introduce shortly the World Economic Forum, the infrastructure and urban development community we have at the forum, including some of the relevant initiatives which might also be relevant for this summit here. One key topic I would like to introduce is on how to accelerate the urban infrastructure delivery. And we have initiatives at the forum which actually look into specific that. Also, the Global Agenda Council on Infrastructure. The second topic would be on how to attract investment. We also have an initiative on that, and I will shortly give you a summary on that initiative. And if time permits, I will also quickly go through an urban transformation mapping exercise carried out in the World Economic Forum environment. So first of all, as you perhaps know, the World Economic Forum is known for its annual meeting in Davos. It's a very small mountain resort in the Eastern Alps of Switzerland. In that annual meeting, 2,500 leaders from government, business and civil society meet to discuss topics around the global economy, governance and geopolitics. However, this coming Davos, next January, we will focus on 5 priority areas, one of which is infrastructure and urban development. Since the World Economic Forum does not work. Okay. Since the World Economic Forum is far more than the annual meeting, I would like to give you a brief introduction. The forum was established in 1971 as a not-for-profit foundation. It's headquartered in Geneva, Switzerland. It's an independent, impartial, not too tied to any special interest organization, and our mission is as modest as improving the state of the world through public-private cooperation. But beside the annual meeting, we have a lot of regional meetings as well as round tables and a very unique expert network of 1,500 experts working together in now also connected in a digital network across the world. And last week we had a meeting in Dubai, annual meeting of that Global Agenda Council Summit. This is a selection or a select overview on initiatives which are run globally on the forum. First of all, the Global Strategic Infrastructure Initiative, which was launched in 2011. Then in the urban space, we have an initiative which is called Future of Urban Development since 2012. And before that, we looked into Slim City Initiative in 2010, catalyzing retrofit finance and investment in commercial real estate in 2011. As of this year, in January, we received the mandate in Davos to launch an initiative on emerging horizons in real estate, which is an initiative on real asset bubbles, on real estate bubbles. We also have an initiative on foundations against corruption, which is an industry-specific initiative on corruption risk within the engineering, construction, and real estate industry. This is in collaboration with an existing initiative called Partnering Against Corruption Initiative. As you all well know, that infrastructure projects provide the bedrock of society's prosperity and well-being. Yes, however, there's many countries in the developing as well as in the developed world who are currently facing significant infrastructure deficits. This is because of the growing population, some of the countries with fast urbanization rates, changing demands, as well as aging urban infrastructure assets. Therefore, there is a strong demand for infrastructure, and its currently insufficient supply leads to a global investment gap of about $1 trillion yearly until 2020. The estimates range between $0.8 and $1.4 trillion. And if you even consider environmentally clean infrastructure required, that estimate would have been raised by an additional 200 to 300 billion US dollars per year. So I would like to present to you one of our publications issued in the last term of the Global Agenda Council on Infrastructure between 2012 and 2014. During that term, the Council has identified three main questions that need to be addressed to close that urban infrastructure gap. First question would be how to fund infrastructure more efficiently and effectively. So what needs to be done to bridge that gap? And second would be how to prepare and develop infrastructure much faster, including a better delivery, operation, and management of infrastructure. And the third question would be how to better attract infrastructure financing and investment. So what should the public sector do to facilitate the flow of private capital to infrastructure? So I would like to show to you a graph which shows the opening of that infrastructure gap over time. So there is an estimate of 75% of all infrastructure investment which will be needed in the urban environment over the next 40 years. So since this is 75%, this also highly affects cities and its importance as infrastructure is important as a driver of economic competitiveness. So only in recent years, governments around the world, bilateral donors, and international financial institutions became increasingly conscious of this vast challenge. There are some solutions to close that gap. And the response from the B20 and G20 last weekend had been consistent and sustained since 2009. And right now, this year, the current Australian B20 leadership group on infrastructure and investment task force stated that the existing gap is mostly explained by a lack of proper project preparation and institutional support, which you can see here as the 18 trillion accumulatively until 2030, where we need improved project delivery. So in this context, this is one of the methods to close that gap. The other elements like the long-term pipeline or the enabling environment or the better financing, I will touch upon later. This weekend, the G20 leaders' final communiqué released in Brisbane follows the recommendations of the B20 Infrastructure Task Force to first give high priority to tackle global investment and the infrastructure shortfall, then to endorse the Global Infrastructure Initiative, and third, to establish a global infrastructure hub, a knowledge network and database within the next 4 years to enable and to foster international, public and private collaboration on this issue. So, how to accelerate urban infrastructure delivery? There are 3 things which are in common for successful projects. First of all, we need a strong underlying business case in order to generate economic and financial returns. Second, we need a robust project finance and contractual structure in order to ensure bankability and legal enforceability, ensure environmental compliance, and also enable the government to regulate, monitor, and evaluate projects. And third, we need sustainable funding sources. And that also includes to be more creative, which is essential. So obviously paying for infrastructure can be a tough sell for the public and can become a political challenge. However, the search for funding must be a priority for the public and private sector. So to summarize the content of the report, Accelerating Infrastructure Delivery, we need the right funding through incentive frameworks, for example, in contract design, and the effective use of the user pays principle in project finance. We also need a faster project preparation and development by providing institutional support and expertise to ensure sustainability, bankability, and effective delivery of projects. We also need to be more creative in generating revenues to systematically capture the value added by urban infrastructure projects. All these approaches on how to capture the value add are proposed in that report and will help to generate revenue as a fair and efficient way across a broad range of projects. I will come to the next topic, attracting urban infrastructure investment. Early this year, in February 2014, the World Economic Forum, under the umbrella of the Global Infrastructure Initiative, released a report called Infrastructure Investment Policy Blueprint. This report provides insights which are based on interviews of some of the world's largest and leading global infrastructure investors. And it is a set of recommendations for governments on how to attract private capital for public infrastructure projects. So the blueprint is a government policy brief on how to engage with investors and how to attract long-term institutional capital. The blueprint is structured in 3 key themes. First, the creation of a credible and bankable project pipeline. Second, the design of a supportive policy and provision of a regulatory environment. And third, the clarification of the value proposition for each individual project. As you can see here on this chart, there is an example of the UK for 2013, who publishes an annual forward-looking infrastructure pipeline. that pipeline shows the project worth of 377 billion total investment in 2013. This is an example of how to show investors a credible infrastructure pipeline, which gives investors the confidence. Only then investors invest their expertise, their internal expertise, and will be able to build capabilities in that specific market. Second, we also need a viable role for investors. So there is a need for agreement between government and investors on what kind of projects are attractive and what is suitable for private sector participation. At the same time, government has to ensure value for all stakeholders, not only investors. To increase the financial capacity, governments might also consider brownfield capital recycling, which is a process that allows private sector investment in existing infrastructure and then to enable the use of the proceeds to finance greenfield projects. What is also very important is the communication with the public, so a communication plan for the public. And government has to make sure to be transparent, to clearly communicate the benefits of the projects, but also show the potential drawbacks and risk of the project. Within that, you also need a multi-stakeholder process where individuals and organizations are given the opportunity to express their views on the project. For example, through town hall meetings, internet surveys, perhaps also these kind of surveys and forums, local and national referenda. In order to attract investment, we need also a supportive policy and regulatory framework, which includes effective governance and contract mechanisms. This is required to minimize costly renegotiation risks, which is the number one concern of investors, to avoid inefficient, lengthy, costly procurement and permitting processes, and also to minimize the taxation risk, for example, through policy changes over time. So the focus on clarifying the value proposition of each individual project. So the investors are primarily interested in the financials. So government has and project leaders have to make sure the projects are comparable against other alternative investments. So therefore, it is required to offer investors to be able to evaluate potential investment against those in other asset classes. Therefore, the project has to be structured in a way that allows easy comparison across different assets, across different countries, and that will significantly increase the chance to attract global investors. Similarly, it is also required to create a standard methodology for pricing and allocation of the various risks of the project in order to allow effective negotiations on risk allocation. Of course, in order to best allocate the risk, it's always best for the party which is able to manage it best. But this also includes to compensate that party for the risk they are bearing. This also applies to have a closer look in assessing the upside risks and seeing the opportunities. Another tool which is very important is market sounding, to better get to know your investor, but also better to get to know other stakeholders of the project, for example, the asset user. So market sounding is important to learn about investors' risk appetite, to learn very early on in projects investors' concerns and potential improvements in the project structure. And of course, an opportunity to find out additional innovative ideas which can be implemented in that project. It should be taken care of that market sounding is conducted in a fair and transparent manner, and also to make sure the results of the market sounding are transparent and are published. Clearly, it is important to differentiate market sounding from the tender process in order to encourage honest feedback from investors. Here's an overview on the blueprint recommendation checklist, which is more or less a summary of the last slides following the blueprint recommendations. So first of all, in order to have a strategic vision which will increase investor interest, there's a healthy pipeline of future projects and a clear role of investors is defined. Second, to have a policy and regulatory priorities to lower the expenses and cost of capital for the investors, but also to make sure value for money is provided to government and the public. And second, the third column, to have an investor value proposition, which has to be strong in order to have bankable projects to attract investors' interest while maximizing value for money for government and public. This is an overview over our global strategic infrastructure initiative and work streams. So as you can see, and I mentioned it in the beginning of the presentation, over the last years from 2011, we looked into different project-related issues. So in 2011, we looked into how should we prioritize infrastructure projects to create the greatest impact. 2012, we looked into how should we prepare, deliver, and operate the selected project most efficiently and effectively. 2013, we looked into how we should operate and maintain existing assets more effectively and efficiently. And this year, in 2014, and also next years, we will have a closer look into how we best mitigate risks, project risks. And on the horizontal columns, on the horizontal rows, you can see first row showing the Global Infrastructure Knowledge Series, phase 1 to phase 4 this year. And then the regional so-called deep dive here in Africa, the African Strategic Infrastructure Initiative. And this year we are looking into extending that to Latin America with a new engagement on Colombia, Mexico, and Brazil. And also mentioned by the B20, G20, the next row is the knowledge and collaboration platform, which was already started as an idea in 2011 and now was proposed on developing that global knowledge and collaboration platform as a submission of the B20, G20 in Australia. The last row, you see the Advancing Infrastructure Finance project with the Infrastructure Finance Policy Blueprint document I just mentioned. The other projects we are related to the urban space, and I mentioned briefly the Future of Urban Development Initiatives, which serves as a partner in the transformation of cities around the world. And the main goal of this initiative is to address major urban challenges. And we aim to make innovation accessible to cities and business leaders in a mutually beneficial setting. So there is a whole set of publications around that initiative. And as briefly introduced, the initiative on real estate emerging horizons, launched early this year, is an initiative which addresses issues around real estate bubbles in order to better understand the underlying mechanisms of asset pricings and the root causes of asset bubbles, and also to enable a multi-stakeholder discussion on how asset bubbles can be prevented and the consequences be limited and mitigated. And of course, the question on should bubbles be managed in the public interest or not. The other project overview, I go briefly over that, is that corruption is among the greatest barriers to stability, growth, and competitiveness of economies for many countries and cities. So the infrastructure sector is vastly prone to the risk of bribery and corruption. And to advance collective action in that sector, our infrastructure industry and our industry team works together with our partner companies in the engineering, construction, real estate industry, and we launched that project. Oops, I have 3 minutes left, and I would give you a quick overview on the Global Agenda Council and the future of cities. And as you can see here on that slide, cities and urbanization is a very important issue for many other councils within the forum. So we have nearly 90 councils working on different issues, and the outer circle you see here are all the councils pointing towards the issue of cities and urbanization. So all is interrelated, and currently we started the initiative to interlink all that knowledge. And this is a very exciting process. And another issue I would like to quickly raise is the Industry Agenda Council on Real Estate and Urbanization. For the coming term of the next 2 years, we will look into the growing impact of climate change and sustainability issues in the urban development space. So recognizing that there is insufficient shared vision, alignment, and collaboration among key stakeholders related to sustainable and resilient urban development practices, our Industry Agenda Council on the Future of Real Estate and Urbanization has refined a council mandate that for the next 2 years, the council will collaboratively design and deliver a set of principles for real estate to contribute to sustainable and resilient urban development. And this is how I would like to end my presentation.